I'm Evelyn Culp, interviewing her.
Welcome to Evie's History Bites, hosted by Martha Owen, the Heritage Collection Manager of the ELC Heritage Collection. Welcome to another episode of Evie's History Bites. I'm Martha, your host, and I have a great episode for you. Deb Parcell from Indiana Landmarks joined me, and we talked about historic preservation and Indiana landmarks. Let's dive right into our conversation. We'll go ahead and get started. So thank you, Deb, so much for sitting down with me and talking about historic preservation. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hey, thanks for having me here. I really appreciate this. It's a great opportunity. So I was born in Elkhart County, and I've lived here my whole life in Benton Township. So I went to Fairfield to school. Kids all went to Fairfield to school. So I'm pretty local, not from Nappanee, but Nappanee's always been part of our life. I worked for my dad in his feed mill, was his bookkeeper, and we bought feed from Nappanee, Nappiana, and then in Super Sweet and ADM eventually. So I've spent a lot of time over here picking up feed and delivering it. So I continued to be a bookkeeper for quite a while, got married, had children, finally realized I really don't like bookkeeping. So if I'm going to work all the time, I should be doing something that I'm passionate about. So I went back to school when my youngest daughter started first grade. And first I studied architectural design at IUSB, or at Ivy Tech, and then went to IUSB and got a history degree. Took some courses in historic preservation through Ivy Tech online. And then I went to work for an architect. Did an internship in Madison, Indiana. Left my husband and 4 kids at home for the summer. Went down and did that, got some more experience, and eventually got this job at Indiana Landmarks. And I've been there the better part of 10 years now. So
Okay.
That's me.
So what is Indiana Landmarks?
Indiana Landmarks is a not-for-profit historic preservation organization. We are the largest one in the entire country. So we've got about 45 employees. We've got 9 regional offices, which puts us in contact with people closely all over the state. This is part of the northern region where we are, obviously. We cover 17 counties from our office. Our office is in South Bend, but we go to the Ohio state line and then south to Adams and Wells County over to Peru and then back up. That's kind of our area. But we work with people and organizations like the Historic Preservation Commission here in Nappanee and others across the state to help preserve what matters to people. So that varies a lot. Could be houses, commercial buildings, barns, churches, you name it, things that matter to people, and try to connect people with their heritage.
Okay. So what is your role at Indiana Landmarks?
That is hard to define. I do all kinds of things, as you heard earlier. I'm taking calls from contractors here.
Yeah.
We've got a project house right now in Kendallville that we're working on, trying to get that totally restored. It was sinking into the ground, so we acquired the house, stabilized it, had helical piers installed and a new foundation wall. And now we're finishing out the interior, so it'll be move-in ready. We don't typically finish out houses to that level, but in this case we are. And so I'm overseeing that project, working with historic preservation commissions. One project I've got right now that's just a lot of fun is checking out the properties that were surveyed. You know, there were county surveys done all across Indiana. Some of them were a long time ago, clear back to 1980, I think is the oldest one I've got, up to about 2012. So looking at those and finding the outstanding properties, the ones that were the most intact at the time of the survey, and then trying to determine where they are now. Are they still in really good shape? Do they even exist? Have they changed? Sometimes I find like a church or a school that's been radically altered. So trying to determine all that. So I've been traveling all over, looking at places, a lot of them in the country, rural properties, And then we're looking at those and trying to determine what's endangered and how could we intervene to maybe save some of those really outstanding properties.
Okay, very, very cool. So why are you mentioned the Nappanee Historic Preservation Commission? So why are historic preservation commissions important?
They're important because they actually help preserve buildings. Things can be put on the National Register, and unless there's federally funded work going on nearby, a person on the National Register can do anything they want with their building. They could even tear it down. I hate to say that, but it's true. We don't want to encourage that. But locally, the state of Indiana provides for towns to have historic preservation commissions, and those commissions can establish local designations, whether that's one building, like you have several here in Nappanee, or it could be a bunch of buildings together in a district. And that commission then will oversee the changes that happen, so that something that really matters to the community doesn't just disappear. They can guide the change. And I think that's really important. It helps people too, as we preserve those older buildings and the character of our neighborhoods and our downtowns. They connect with the history of the area.
Yeah. So why is historic preservation important?
Well, again, a lot of those reasons. It connects us with our past, and sometimes we see mistakes that we made in the past and we don't do those again. It grounds people. I feel like as society gets more mobile and people move around, they don't have that connection with their past. Having lived in the same area a long time, I can say, oh, my grandparents lived here, and my dad was born there, and my cousin lives over there. But most people don't have those deep connections, and so it gives them a sense of groundedness. And preservation has been found to be economically good for a community. Houses that are historic tend not to change hands as frequently. They're maintained well. It's a good economic driver for a community.
Okay. And I did not put this question in what I sent you, but can you just explain, what is the difference between a historic preservation commission and a historical society?
That's a great question. People get those confused all the time. So a preservation commission is a quasi-judicial group that actually can enforce create ordinances and enforce guidelines. Mm-hmm. And they can even assess fines if people do things out of order. That rarely happens, but potentially they could. Where a historical society is it's more like a museum, where they're just interested in the past, the history of the community, but not necessarily physically watching the changes that go on with the building.
Yeah, and I think that's what people sometimes get it confused, because we have a historic preservation commission here in Nappanee, but we don't have a historical society. That the library has stepped into that role for the past 70 plus years. So I think that's where sometimes people just get really, really confused, because they're like, why isn't historic preservation doing this? But they're really looking at the buildings and preserving them, whereas here at the Heritage Collection and the Nappanee Public Library, we're preserving the stories behind those buildings.
Right. Which I love the stories. That part is great. I could get really seriously involved with those sometimes. And sometimes that's the impetus for saving a building, is because there's a really good story that goes with it. And so maybe it doesn't even look architecturally, significant, but it has a great story, a great connection with people and events in a community.
So what should the general public do to support in historic preservation and Indiana landmarks?
So I think people need to understand the role, definitely, of the commission. They need to look around and decide what's important in the community. and support that. If, for instance, you've got a building that people look at and they love and they think it's important, and they hear maybe that it's going to be locally designated, show up to meetings, support that, spread the word about that, participate in events that the commission comes up with. Like we had a window workshop a while back. You don't have to live in a 150-year-old home. Maybe your house is only 50 years old and you still might need to do wood window repairs. So, learning about those things and being involved, maybe if you have a house tour someday or something, just being involved with that and spreading the word helps bring people into town too.
Yeah, and I know one thing that really helped the Heritage Collection years ago was a grant that we received through Indiana Landmarks in partnership with Indiana Humanities, which was the Historic Education Grant. And I know that we're forever grateful because that helped us launch our virtual walking tours. And it's a great partnership then to actually have received that and to really look at the building's histories and highlight those buildings.
Right. Yeah, I think those are great grant opportunities because they always award them to things that are public facing. So reaching out to the public and educating and drawing them in. So we see a lot of them go out for walking tours for building histories. Sometimes they put little markers on a building that tell, this is what it was 150 years ago. Or one community did a coloring book that was nothing but historic buildings in the town, gave a little history of it, and then they had those printed up and hand them out to fourth grade classes in all their schools.
Nice. Yeah.
So that helps kids understand, here's this building, I drive by it every day, and this was a Civil War hospital, or, things they wouldn't know.
Yeah, that is really, really cool. Our historic preservation, years before they kind of laid dormant for a little bit, they created a coloring book.
Okay.
And when they started, you could tell that they were starting to become dormant and everything. I quickly asked them, can I have the coloring book files? So our second graders that come for tours at the museum, if they have to listen, and we quiz them at the end. So I think this year we did 12 kids out of 80. They won their own coloring books because we bind them ourselves. We print them and bind them ourselves. And then we also give the teachers physical copies as well so that they can go back and print that and make copies of them for all of the kids. But that is so nice because there's buildings in the coloring book that aren't even standing anymore.
Yeah.
And so people are the parents are even where are these? And it's they were lost to fire, new businesses coming in. It's so sad when buildings get torn down that have such great history and are so beautiful. Nappanee has had multiple of those. Coppice Hotel was torn down, and a building that is just brick and mortar sits there now. And our founder, Evelyn, we have a great picture of her. She's actually it was when the high school was torn down. She's standing there with her arms, and Evelyn was maybe 4'11" in her wedge high heels. She probably was over 5 foot, but she's standing there with her arms crossed over, and she is just glaring at the school officials, being like, "How could you tear this down?" So that's great where Indiana Landmarks steps in, and you guys can put out you have your 10 most endangered buildings list that goes out. And you really see what is on that endangered list around the state, really.
Yeah, it's really good because it draws attention to those buildings, and very few of them over the many, many years we've been doing this have actually been lost.
Oh,
so
nice.
It's a very important thing. And sometimes that's what gets a community interested in preservation, is when they actually lose something like an old school or a downtown building or something like that, and suddenly everyone's eyes are open and it's like, that really mattered and we don't want this to happen again.
Yeah. And I think too, a situation that happened here in Nappanee for one of our buildings to get historic distinction, with Westside Park, and how everybody wanted to just tear down the original building, and that they just wanted to build new. And then historic preservation stepped in and they saved the building, which now we have a night on. It's over 100 years old now. I think it was built in 1923. But like, we have this historic park building that was part of our first park. And right. And like, people can, tell the story. The inside looks new, but the outside is still the same. And I think that's great. Along with our train depot.
Yes.
Not a lot of communities can say that they still have their train depot along the tracks. A lot of them have been moved off the tracks or even are gone, period.
Right.
I think Bremen's depot, their depot is weird, but I don't think it's on the tracks anymore.
No.
And what they've done with theirs, and then how we've turned ours into a food bank. So I think that is just great. And then, of course, we're sitting in the John Hartman House, and that's right. another distinction as well, because we can't with the Hartman House, we can't be on the National Registry of Historic Places, but at least we can be saved
right,
when it comes to like, if somebody would come in and want to tear the house down, they could put a stop to it. So, and that's what I love about Indiana Landmarks, is like, you come beside the people and the groups and really educate them as well as guide them and what to do. And I'm really, really excited about the next designation that's coming down the pipeline. That one has been on my heart for so long. And working with the city, I think I started working with the city on that building over 5 years ago.
Oh my goodness!
With getting them pictures of how it looked like when it was built, in the building process, all that kind of stuff, so that we could try and work and get that facade updated. So I'm so excited about the next one.
That is a fabulous, fabulous building. And yeah, it's so good to see everyone excited about that. I think it's really important to the town, because that would create a tremendous hole if that was gone.
Oh,
so.
Yes. And I agree. And I don't think that, something new could ever replace it.
No, it really couldn't. There's just a different feel to a historic building. I mean, they're just solid. They were made out of materials that we often can't even source anymore.
Yeah.
And so there was a real sense of permanence. And I think that's important for a community to preserve.
Yeah, and especially because we do have a house in our community that we call it the house that the Depression built, because literally it used recycled materials. And it actually is made of brick that you cannot legally purchase anymore. So it around its windows, it has clinker brick.
Really?
Yeah, and so like, you're not supposed to be able to purchase clinker brick, but back in 1929 when it was being built, they were able to.
Oh, that's fun. But that's what's cool about preservation, is that there's lots of different buildings. There's the big ones, there's the small ones that seem insignificant but have a good story, or the materials are unique or whatever. And it's all of those things that makes your community.
Yeah. Yes, it does make it great. So in what ways, besides the building that we've talked about, with is getting in the process of getting historically designated locally, so in what ways is Indiana Landmarks working with Nappanee on historic preservation?
Continuing to help with their guidelines and getting their commission going again. There was a bit of a hiatus there when nothing was happening, and now it is. So trying to modernize the processes that are used to make it a little easier and hopefully a little more palatable to people that might consider locally designating their properties. So looking at educating and supporting them, bringing new information that we get from various sources, other preservation organizations that we work with, bringing that in, helping to create events and educational experiences for the community as well. We can bring in different speakers and do some hands-on workshops. Those are often popular. So those are things that we can do for the town.
Nice. And like I said, you're always welcome to use the Hartman House. I'm always
Great facility for that.
I'm always up for it to be updated and things fixed, and because it needs some help. We are in talks with the city of trying to get our chimney fixed, because we noticed that our chimney is falling down.
Or maybe that's something we can look at.
Yeah.
The mason I was just on the phone with is very good with that. So
yeah, that really does. That sounds good. I'll make sure to bug Dan about that.
Do that. That's good.
So and I will say we probably will need the mason for some foundation work, because we took away one of our outside beds and found some major cracks in our foundation. So we it was probably a good thing that we took out some of our flower beds.
Yeah, because you would have no idea what was going on behind that otherwise. So that is a good thing.
Yeah. And luckily they did not hit the foundation when they took out the flower beds.
Good. That has been known to happen sometimes.
So what does the future look like? Well, actually, I should say this. I have one last question.
Sure.
But is there anything that we haven't talked about that you wanted to touch base on?
I think we've hit most of it. Always my concern in a town where lots of buildings are on the National Register, but very few are locally designated. Wanted to be sure that people understand that those are two very separate things. Being on the National Register does open the door for some tax credit opportunities for private residences. There aren't a lot of things that help foot the bill for repairs and restoration on a private house. But if you're in a National Register district, there is a 20% state tax credit that you can look into, and many things qualify for that. So that is a real advantage to that. Commercial buildings as well, there's a tax credit that's on the federal level. And there's a lot of things for not-for-profit and government-owned buildings. So we like to be able to point people to that. I think that's important to know. And one branch of Indiana Landmarks organization is Sacred Places Indiana, which works with churches.
Okay.
And so there needs to be an active congregation, so not just an empty church building, but helping them with capacity building and making sure they're using their building to its fullest extent, and then finding funding sources, because many of these older churches are beautiful, but a lot of them, the congregations are getting smaller, and it's harder to maintain, to provide the funds to maintain the building. So we help them with that. And I think that's a really important thing that a lot of people are not aware of that we've got.
Yeah, and Indiana Landmarks headquarters is in an old church as well.
It is. It's in the Central Avenue United Methodist Church. It was the Central Avenue United Methodist Church. At the start of the 20th century, it was the biggest Methodist church in the state of Indiana. And by the end of the century, it was down to about 30 people, because everyone had moved out to the suburbs. Noblesville and Carmel and all those places. That area is enjoying a real resurgence of population now, but it's not necessarily making churches grow downtown. So we were able to acquire that building, make a lot of repairs, and open it up now to the public. I mean, our offices are in the Sunday school wing, but the old sanctuary and the old Sunday school area are just amazing, and it gets a lot of community use So that's something we really like to do, is not just save buildings, but find uses for them that are relevant in the 21st century.
Yeah, nice. All right, so my last question.
Okay.
So what does the future look like for Indiana Landmarks and the field of historic preservation?
I think there's a lot of exciting things going on. We at Indiana Landmarks have a new CEO as of last year, and he's got a lot of ideas. He keeps us very busy. But he doesn't have a huge preservation background, but he does with not-for-profits and things like that. So he brought a fresh set of eyes, and it's really making us examine the things we do, why we do them, how we do them, how to be more efficient and relevant. And preservation in general, it does date way, way back to like Mount Vernon days, and it was, I think originally it was more of a reactive thing instead of a proactive thing. And then there were other, little bits of preservation. The real big push came in 1966 with the National Historic Preservation Act. And that was really a reaction to urban renewal as buildings were being torn down in cities, big and small, all across the country. And suddenly people woke up and said, oh my goodness, our past is gone. There's nothing there. And so they created that Historic Preservation Act, which has been a good thing. But all the way along, more reactive. And I think now we're starting to look at it and say, house museums are beautiful. I love this one. It's great. But there need to be other things out there besides that. How do we use these buildings in a current fashion? And what other things are we looking at? Are we looking at how to address environmental changes and how that impacts historic buildings as you see flooding in places that never saw it before? Things like that. Just looking at that and thinking about newer technology. So how do we incorporate maybe solar with historic properties and make that all work?
Yeah. And I know with our house museum, it's so different than the rest of the museum proper, because in the museum proper we have lights that switch on and off. We have a lot of technology. So for us, the house, we try and keep it as close to being historically accurate as possible. I mean, don't look into our kitchen. It's a very modern kitchen, but we want to keep that, and so we're actively always looking for ways to not bring the technology into here. And I think that's where Indiana Landmarks helps so much, is that you guys are, even though there is the technology out there, it is what are we doing to keep the past?
Right.
And we have so many beautiful homes of like our founding fathers and authors and things like that have been saved. I mean, the East Coast has done a wonderful, phenomenal job in historic preservation and things like that. But then, like, coming west, there's not much saving going on. I mean, if you take Fort Wayne, for instance, where the original fort was, is now apartment buildings, but they have the replica fort.
Which just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, they have the replica fort that's like not too far away from the apartments, and they're trying their best to try and make it as close to possible as the original fort as they can, but it's just not the same.
Right, it's not.
Yeah.
So being able to hang on to those authentic things, and I think authenticity is huge, and I appreciate that about this particular house, because it truly takes you back in time.
Yeah.
And you're able to actually experience it all. It's not everything roped off at the door, and you kind of look at it from a distance. So I think that really helps people understand a little better if they can get close to things.
Yeah, and we do have a comprehensive plan to do renovations on the house. It's just money. Yes. And time, and figuring out what is exactly original to the house and what is not original to the house. We do know that we do have the back addition onto the house where it's storage for us that is not original to the house. And I mean, our porch is probably porch number 3 or 4 or 5 on it. So
Yeah.
we have talked. We do know that the blue is not the original color. But we can't bring ourselves to go white.
I don't blame you, especially now when everybody's painting their house white.
Yeah, so we have pleaded with the city that if it does get repainted, that it is kept it's blue, because that is not only what a recognizable color. The Heritage Collection has actually integrated that color into our brand. And we actually call it Hartman House Blue.
Nice.
Or Hartman. I think we might have shortened it to Hartman Blue, but we call it Hartman Blue. So it's like one of our main colors that we use. So I have pleaded, like, please do not change the color of the house.
It's been blue for quite a while.
Yes, it has been blue for quite a while. But in our John Killer albums that we have, that are great for historic preservation uses, and we use it all the time for historic preservation. It does show that it's white.
Okay.
And it does show that the pink house, so the Frank Coppice house, is actually white as well.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Well.
the John Coppice house, so the blue house, that it kind of looks white, but then it also kind of looks like a darker blue possible color.
So it might have been.
Yeah, so it might have been, but black and white photographs are so hard, but when you can tell that a house is white by just its by its photo.
Yeah. White is one you can usually pick up in a black and white photo. So
So thank you so much, Deb, for sitting down with me and talking about historic preservation and historic buildings and saving them and working on them. I truly appreciate all the work that you are doing and all the work that Indiana Landmarks are doing.
Well, thank you so very much. I appreciate the opportunity. It's always great to share and love what all's happening here, as well as in Nappanee, greater city of Nappanee. It's exciting to see.
Oh, yeah, great. I am so excited that Historic Preservation Commission is back and that they are working on coming back, and they have some great projects down
a lot of
the
energy
pipeline.
there.
Yes, lots and lots of energy. So it's so exciting.
Wonderful.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you so much again.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Well, that's all that I have for today. A special thank you to Deb for being my guest. And next month, Greg from FCDC will be my guest, and we will be talking about the center. But before you go, be sure to subscribe to this podcast, hit like, or leave us a comment.